Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Unbeaten up-and-comer of Poland, Laura Grazeb, is set to return to action against another unbeaten up-and-comer that hails from España, Spain.
Mariana Herrera.
And what is being billed as a battle of the unbeatens. Laura Grazeb, she'll have home field advantage. This is set to go down in her native Poland as part of a knockout boxing night promotion.
Laura Grazeb sports a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws.
3 knockouts to Mariana Herrera, who sports a professional record of 3 wins, no losses, and no draws. No recorded knockouts, not yet. Slight edge in experience to Laura, who has more professional experience than Mariana does. Somewhat. She's got 4 more professional contests, 4 more professional bouts than Mariana does. She will have home field advantage, and she is the house fighter.
Laura Grazeb is.
I vaguely recall hearing that Mariana was supposed to be taking on unbeaten up-and-comer of the United Kingdom, Nina Hughes, but that fight fell apart. That fight fell through. Nina is now going to be challenging for the WBA bantamweight title against America's own Jamie Mitchell, the reigning champion. Nina Hughes has moved on, as has Mariana. I don't like Mariana's chances in this contest. Laura Grazeb is one of the better young unbeaten up-and-comers in today's featherweight division. The featherweight division is a densely populated division, a densely populated, talent-rich weight class with a lot of unbeaten up-and-comers set to make a splash. Unbeaten up-and-comers like amateur standout Karis Artingstall, Sky Nicholson, Germany's own Sophia Leash and Sarah Liegmund, unbeaten Raven Chapman, Laura Grazeb and Mariana Herrera among them. Mariana actually saw action 2 times already this year. She debuted as a professional late last year in November, returned to action in April, then again in July. So there's no ring rust or cobwebs she needs to shake off. Here and now, she's about as sharp as she's going to be. Laura Grazeb. Laura also saw action 2 times this year, once in March, then again in June. Laura Grazeb debuted as a professional about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago in 2019. She fought 2 times in 2019. She was real busy in 2020, fought 3 times in 2020, sat out all of last year due to promotional issues, and she returned to action early this year in March, then returned to action again in June. She ain't got no ring rust or cobwebs she needs to shake off. She's sharp, and I give Laura the edge here. I think Laura can win a points decision against Mariana. She's more experienced, and she's the house fighter. Laura's a talented boxer. Exhibits some of the same finer qualities that you see in Ellie Scotney. Very fleet of foot, good in and out game, measuring distance, planting punches, and safely getting out of harm's way. She's bouncy. She's got speed in those feet and speed in those hands. She's got somewhat of a mean streak. Not the heaviest hands, though. Not necessarily all that big on power. She's coming off a win over then unbeaten Martine Bisson of La France. Laura won a unanimous decision in what was billed as an 8-rounder. You know, Mariana, she hasn't even actually fought in an 8-rounder yet, much less a 10-rounder. Laura has. Laura fought in a 10-rounder in December of 2020. That's what I mean when I say that Laura does have more professional experience, more rounds in the bank than Mariana does. And Laura's got her whole career ahead of her, just like Mariana. Laura's 27 years old. And I do like Laura's chances in this thing. This will be the second unbeaten up-and-comer, the second unbeaten fighter that she takes on in that succession. It was Martine Bisson before, it's Mariana Herrera here and now. I like Laura's chances. BoxRec has Laura Grazeb registered as a super bantamweight, though she's never actually fought within the super bantamweight limit. All of her fights have been fought above 122 pounds, above the bantamweight limit. By all accounts, she's a featherweight and has been campaigning as a featherweight. She's a ways out from the world title picture. She does seem to be a ways out from a world title shot. It would be ill-advised to target one so soon in her career when she has time. She's 27 years old, and she's nowhere near ready for an Amanda Serrano.
With just 7 professional fights, not at 7-0.
I don't really get the sense she's ready for Erica Cruz either. Erica Cruz of Mexico, reigning WBA featherweight champion.
Laura's not ready for a title shot.
No, I don't think she is. And I think she should keep doing what she's doing. You know, having those fights domestically in Poland, getting that experience, getting those rounds in the bank, sharpening the tools, and adding to her repertoire. I definitely like the schedule they've got her on. They're keeping her busy. This will be her third fight this year, later on this month, on the 29th. In other news, the ongoing story I'm sure you've heard about by now, welterweight Terence Crawford to fight David Avanesyan on December 10th. Welterweight title holder Terence Crawford and David Avanesian have signed contracts for a pay-per-view fight on December 10th. At CHI Health Center in the champion's native Omaha, Nebraska, Crawford told ESPN on Thursday. The fight will be available on Black Prime for $39.95. A spokesman for the streaming service told ESPN. Crawford, 38 wins, no losses, with 29 knockouts, will earn a career-high 8-figure payday, sources said. What the fuck is Black Prime? Crawford's getting a career-high price for fighting David Avanesian. Am I hearing this right? The number floating around out there in the boxing cosmos is $10 million. You heard that right. Terence Crawford stands to make $10 million from fighting David Avanesian on Black Prime. Crawford remains in talks to face Errol Spence Jr. for the undisputed 147-pound championship, but when it became clear to Crawford that PBC was now targeting the first quarter of 2023 for the fight, he decided to push forward with a title defense to ensure he, like Spence, fought at least once in 2022. Spence and Crawford are still motivated to strike a deal, sources said. With both fighters in their primes and peaking, the welterweight summit meeting stands as one of the biggest commercial fights in the sport. I'm excited about this opportunity, Crawford said. I was really looking forward to the Errol Spence Jr. fight. I started communicating with boxing manager Al Heyman and the PBC back in June, and unfortunately, they represent a fighter in Errol Spence who didn't want the fight as bad as I did. I agreed to all of their bullshit, and they've been dragging their ass for months. Spence was nowhere to be found while I was trying to make the deal. Crawford continued, I explained to Al Heyman and Errol that I was going to fight before the end of the year. David Avanesian is a very tough task. He's knocked out his last 6 opponents, and this guy is dangerous. Once I'm successful against Avanesian, my plan is still the same. Whoop Errol Spence's ass. Your plan might still be the same, but is Errol's? ESPN's #1 pound-for-pound boxer, Crawford, acquiesced to the short end of the financial split for the clash with Errol Spence, who is aligned with Heyman's PBC. Major terms are agreed to, but Crawford, a promotional free agent, wants transparency related to the event's expenses since the contract contains no guaranteed purse, sources said. Rather, Crawford would earn a percentage of the net revenue, so he requested the ability to approve expenses as a partner in the event. And that's not new news. We've known about that for weeks. That story broke weeks ago, that Terence Crawford ain't even getting a goddamn guarantee, for what's supposed to be one of the biggest fights in boxing. What kind of big fish can't guarantee his opponent a purse? If Errol Spence Jr. really is the big fish of the welterweight division, why isn't Crawford getting a guarantee? Didn't Ugas get a guarantee, and Sean Porter and Mikey Garcia? Well, you see how the energy changes whenever it comes to Terence. With sides unable to solve the lingering issue in a timely fashion, Crawford decided to seek a different opponent rather than wait for the PBC for a fight in February or March, sources said. The proposed Showtime pay-per-view was targeted for November 19th, but the extended talks made that date unfeasible, with approximately 60 days needed to properly promote the event and set up training camps. PBC declined to comment on the failed Spence versus Crawford negotiations. Floyd Mayweather, Heyman's longtime business partner, he told Fight Hype earlier this month that Spence versus Crawford wouldn't happen until further down in the future. And that bit of it we knew already. We talked about it here on the channel. We knew that Crawford wouldn't be getting a guarantee, and we knew that a little over a week ago, Floyd said that fight ain't about to happen. So a good portion of this isn't exactly new news. The fight wasn't going to happen this year. And because it's not happening this year, Crawford decided to take a keep busy fight, a maintenance fight. There remains optimism that Spence and Crawford will meet after interim fights, but for now, Crawford will focus on Avanesyan, a 34-year-old Russian fighting out of England. There's 2 things you need to focus on and 2 things you need to remember. 1, Terence Crawford wasn't getting no guaranteed cash for this thing. No money up front. And that's been the story. 2, Floyd already said well over a week ago that this fight ain't happening this year. So if the fight ain't happening this year, what's Crawford supposed to do? Spend the rest of the year sitting on his hands?
Collecting dust and ring rust ahead of what's supposed to be the biggest fight of his career? Is that how he's supposed to go into that fight?
The proposed Spence versus Crawford deal includes a bilateral rematch clause. If the clause is triggered, the winner will earn the majority of the revenue for the return bout, sources said. We want to be a fixture in boxing for years to come.
Black Prime spokesperson said.
Everyone was concerned about the other fight with Errol Spence. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. David Avanesian is a formidable opponent, European champion, and we're excited about December 10th in Omaha.
Where some people are treating this like Terrence Crawford swerved Errol Spence to fight David Avanesyan this year instead. He wasn't going to fight Errol this year.
It's not a wife swap. It's not an either-or situation. If the Spence fight wasn't going to happen this year because the PBC pushed it into the first quarter of next year,
And Terrence Crawford keeping busy with someone else this year, that shouldn't be an issue. Should be a non-issue.
and that's the story. That's been the story. That's not new news. Per Floyd Mayweather Jr. himself, that fight wasn't going to happen this year. It would happen later on down the line in the future. So in the between time, I see no reason Terrence Crawford shouldn't keep busy with someone else. Not if the PBC's targeting next year for the Spence fight.
Early yesterday, the entire situation already devolved into another rousing round of the blame game.
Via some tweets from Errol Spence Jr. saying he's been stalling for months. I could have fought in November. Been fighting at this weight for over a decade. This shit ain't easy or fun. Insinuating that Errol may be moving up?
And here's the thing. Here's what you gotta remember. It's the PBC that wants to move the fight into the first quarter of next year.
I mean, that's the story, and that's the information that's out there. That the fight wasn't going to happen this year anyway because there's not enough time to promote it. So what the PBC wanted to do was move it into February or March of next year. And if that's the situation, and that's the case, then why should it bother Errol or anybody at the PBC that Terrence is keeping busy before this year is out? Why should that bother them? They didn't want to do the fight this year anyway.
They couldn't reach a deal. Floyd said it wasn't going to happen no time soon.
So why should it bother Errol if Terrence keeps busy with David Avanesyan or anybody? Why should that be an issue to him? Is it that you were banking on Terrence being more inactive ahead of this fight than he's ever been as a professional? Is that what you were hoping for?
One of the journos based out of Texas, Calvin Watkins, tweeted,
More Errol Spence on Crawford bypassing him and what to do next. I've got to talk to my manager, but I already told them I'm at this weight too long. I might be moving up. I don't know. I might be moving up. Spence said Crawford was going to be his last fight at 147 pounds, and he still can be.
Pay attention to the verbiage. Bypassing.
Terrence isn't bypassing you because you weren't going to fight Terrence this year. Your people wanted the fight to go down in either February or March of next year. Terrence is just doing a little maintenance fight this year since he knows he's not fighting you.
He's not bypassing Errol Spence Jr. with David Avanesyan. He's keeping busy while he waits for Errol.
Spence and Crawford could fight in spring of 2023. However, Spence said, I've done everything that I said I was going to do, and I'll fight him next, and we'll see who is holding the fight up. Everybody sees now who is holding the fight up. He had this, I guess, in his back pocket. And you know what? He probably did, because he was probably anticipating that you guys weren't going to make this easy, that you were going to drag this out. You had guaranteed cash for Mikey Garcia, and you had guaranteed cash for Sean Porter and Danny and Ugas. But when it comes to Crawford...
No guaranteed cash. No guaranteed money up front for a fight that's supposed to be bigger than those fights. What, you didn't think that was going to be a stumbling block? You didn't think
that was going to be an issue? Do you live under a rock? Or is it that you let Al Heyman do all the thinking for you?
Boxing scribe Keith Idek tweeted, though he can revisit negotiations to fight Crawford sometime next year, been told Errol Spence Jr. will definitely face someone other than Crawford next.
Two names to keep in mind for Spence are Keith Thurman and Stanionis. Stanionis, who stepped aside to allow Spence and Ugas to move forward with their unification match. He is the mandatory challenger by way of the WBA, and by all rights, he should have first dibs on Errol Spence Jr. if Errol is going to end up fighting someone else. But here's the problem. Why is Errol fighting someone else? If your people, your handlers at the PBC, wanted to move the fight into either February or March, Terrence fighting David Avanesyan should be a non-issue. You weren't going to fight him this year anyway.
Sounds to me like he's trying to get out of this fight, and he's using this as an excuse to do it.
If he wants the fight, all he has to do is wait. It's not Errol that needs the maintenance fight. Errol Spence already fought in the last 12 months. It's Terrence that needs the maintenance fight. It's Terrence that needs to get out there and shake the ring rust off, not Errol.
Is that why he wants to walk away? Because he was hoping that Terrence would be an inactive fighter going into this fight.
I've never believed that the PBC was committed to this fight, and I still don't. I haven't forgotten that at the beginning of this year, Tim Smith, the VP of Communications at the PBC, said that people weren't going to buy this fight to make it a financially successful fight. People were going to steal it. They had no faith in the show. You fast forward a couple of months, and what you're hearing is that they didn't even guarantee Terrence any money.
You got money to guarantee Mikey Garcia, money to guarantee Danny Garcia, money for Sean, money for Ugas, but no money for Terrence.
Boxing scribe Dan Raphael tweeted, if someone is paying Crawford 8 figures for a 100-to-1 fight, good for him, but that has to be dirty money or the dumbest person in the world just wanting to waste cash, because at that price, the event has literally zero chance to do anything but lose millions. And you know what? Maybe Dan's right. Maybe he is. But that's not Errol's problem, or Al Heyman's, or the PBC's, for that matter. If somebody wants to give Terrence Crawford $10 million in the mean-in-between time, good for Terrence, because he needs it. Dealing with you guys, he hasn't been able to get the goddamn fight done. He hasn't been able to fight. And that's consistent with anybody that gets all wrapped up with a PBC fighter.
It's consistent with anybody that has to deal with them.
Stanionis agreed to step aside so that Errol could fight Ugas, and as a result of that, he's only boxed once this year.
Just once, dealing with you schmucks.
On the premise that you guys could get the Crawford fight over the line. And have you gotten the Crawford fight over the line? Because it's all on you. There's no Bob Arum to blame. There's no top-ranked involved. It's just you and Terrence.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier tweeted, for those thinking Terrence Crawford is at fault, he's not fighting Spence.
You're mistaken. Crawford retained a second attorney to make it happen. Heyman threw up so many roadblocks and stall tactics over 5 months, Crawford realized this isn't happening and simply moved on. I wouldn't even say moved on. I would say he's keeping busy with David Avanesyan. If it wasn't the PBC's intention anymore to do this fight this year, then what's wrong with him keeping busy? What, do you want him to be inactive? You want him to be rusty?
They probably do.
Look, here's the gist of it. The fight's not necessarily dead. Not yet. The fight's not dead unless Errol decides to fight someone else early next year, because by all accounts, it was the PBC's plan to do the Crawford fight next year. But if he decides to fight someone else, it's because he's moved on, not Terrence.
You ain't got time to promote that fight this year. You ain't got time to do it. You probably don't have the money either.
You need the new annual budget to roll in so you can finance the fucking fight.
That's the gist of it.